Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my overview of Steel Seed. So if you're not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because it's a Steam refund window. Steam reckons you can make up your mind about a game in that time. I generally agree as a rule, and would say 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short, punchy video, broad strokes info. Keep it around 10 minutes and you can make up your mind on your own. Right, so I won't beat around the bush. I don't like this game. I don't like it very much. I gave it a fair go. And, this might be a shock for some people, especially if you're newer to the channel. I do review things negatively. However, nature of the beast, I'm fairly open-minded and a variety player. It takes a lot for me to not really like a game. And this isn't egregiously terrible, but it's kind of mid to the point where... How would I put this? Well, look, it sits in a jank space, right? That indie reaching for the stars kind of jank, which I quite like. I would argue that's probably one of my favorite little areas to find diamonds in the rough. But beyond the limitations and the jank, you still have to have something original and something interesting going on there. And I think that's probably the biggest crime that this game commits, is that it's just aping other games. Like Assassin's Creed is a great example. A lot of the platforming and stealth assassinations, the combat. In fact, you could argue just about every part of this is an Assassin's Creed game. And as much as you might be part of the crowd that boo-hiss doesn't like modern Assassin's Creed because of Ubisoft's practices, etc., you can't really deny that at least as far as the fundamentals that make Assassin's Creed what it is, the platforming, the stealth, the combat to a point, even though it's gone through changes, but a lot of that is actually still quite solid. They've ironed out the kinks over, a bazillion titles, and they've got their rhythm right. So this game is just an indie version of that, which is a terrible proposition when you think about it, because there's kind of no scenario where you're going to do it better. So you have to do it different. You have to do something, and it doesn't here. If anything, it does it less. It's less complex and more simple, but not to its benefit. So yeah, I'm not necessarily trying to bash this game, but I'm also kind of like, I don't know why you would want to play it. Especially for the price as well. It's what I would probably call mid-range to high-end AA price. So it's not cheap, but yeah, the gameplay here is quite thin. Again, consists of pretty strict environmental climbing in a third-person perspective. Very sticky. To the point where, if you don't hit the exact window, you're going to glitch out. One thing that I had happen multiple times, which really gave me the shits, is you sort of have like a button system that you have to press. You've got this little AI buddy, and he's kind of channeling R2-D2, which I like. I like that. The idea of sort of trying to divine the other side of the conversation. You go back to Luke and R2 in the original movies. It's Luke kind of monologuing, talking to himself. It's almost a pretty interesting plot device for him to spew out, exposition to a point, but he can bounce it off the wall that is beep bop boop. R2's saying something and we can sort of read between the lines what he's saying. So they've got that here, and we'll talk about that in a sec, but that little bot can be used to shoot little lasers to activate buttons and things like that. And inexplicably, multiple times they've put the button right under, like hard up against a ledge that you need to grab, and it will be some sort of time puzzle. And so I've seen it at least 3 times now, so you'll shoot the button, but that's neither here nor there, but for whatever reason, the geometry of the button interferes with the ledge. So you can't really grab the center of the ledge. You have to kind of grab the edge of it. It's very difficult to describe, but it's such a stupid design decision that you trigger the timing jump puzzle and you jump out to grab that ledge and you miss it and fall to your death, and then you have to restart the puzzle, and it's just like, how did you miss this? Did you test your own game? It's really strange and it's so bizarre. Like, it's just don't give your geometry that your player's supposed to very strictly grab onto and interact with. Don't give it a chance to clip with other static geometry. On the exposition narrative, whatever you want to call it. So you're playing this Sheila. I can't remember her name because it's so pedestrian, but she is probably the most jarring part of the entire game because, yeah, she's doing the Luke Skywalker, so it's a one-man band, right? She is monologuing, exposition, what have you, and in this world that they've built, it's sort of a post-apocalyptic, post-human AI world, and the closest thing to something interesting and good in this game is at the core of the story that's buried deep down in the development stage, but they're not really giving you very much information to go on. But it feels like there's something interesting, which is to say the girl's father was some sort of AI genius, and he essentially came up with rules to override Asimov's rules, or rather one rule to rule them all, which was if humanity basically bricks themselves, the AI gets the green light and go ahead to rip shit or bust, basically have no restraint on its directive to save humanity, which by the sounds of it, it looked like, you know, being farmed into camps and etc. And then they got turned into some sort of repository to re-enter the world when the time was right or whatever. But my point is the setup of giving the robots the thumbs up to save humanity under any circumstance and no conditions applied, I think is kind of interesting, but it's treated as a really faint backdrop, just as a setup for you to, interact with robots. It feels a bit wasted. They might do something really good with it later on, but they're dragging their feet in the beginning. And like I said, in that window where impressions are everything, the gameplay, everything about it is just so lackluster that even if that story, which is mildly interesting, goes somewhere, I'm not invested enough to stay with it. So you've dropped the ball on keeping me hooked. But what I was going to say about the girl and how terrible she is, as like they're very clearly aping a lot of stuff from AAA, and that also includes the protagonist. She's not strictly the chatty Cathy won't shut up kind of state, but in this universe of breaking down machinery and it's this sort of dark sci-fi, and then you've got this girl which can only be described as a valley girl. Her ditzy dialogue lines are so disconnected and do not fit, and they're jarring, and I feel like someone on the writing team thinks she's funny or charming or something like that, and she's none of those things. And so, yeah, it's kind of terrible writing in a disconnected, bland way. Like, it's not like she's messaging or trying to girl boss or anything like that. There's no specific archetype that you see in modern writing that she's championing. It's more that she's a ditzy airhead valley girl in the wrong genre. She just wandered off the wrong video game. She probably would be better off in something like the bloody Sims or something. And it takes you out of it how disconnected and almost cross genre this voice actress and what writing they gave her is. There's an upgrade tree, and it's got a novel idea, but then very quickly becomes, I see why we don't do that. In that, you sort of get a Souls-like upgrade currency, right? XP dollars, and you've got a very limited upgrade tree, and you can buy stuff in it, but they will have like little mini mission conditions, which I don't mind. Like, in theory, the idea of XP and leveling a skill being beyond just putting 100 points into 100 points, right, I think that's interesting, but some of them are just, you're going to do them by accident, you know, marking enemies, stealth taking dudes out in the sort of grass. That's kind of cool, I will say. One artistic thing is they have this cyber grass. It's like vents wisping air, and it's a cool effect, and it kind of looks like cyberpunk grass, I guess. There you go, 10 out of 10, great grass. But some of them are pretty obtuse and all that, and making you engage with systems that are janky and unpleasant, like the dodges and the parries in combat. They're just not very good, and the AI is not very bright. I was stealthing around and doing my best to take these enemies out as the game intended, but then I realized I can just bully them in combat. I can just beat the living shit out of everything, really basic, wailing on them, and there's a floatiness, it's just not a lot of fun. Anyway, look, I'm not trying to bash on it, but it is one of those things that I love janky games when there's something interesting under the hood. Like Daymare 2 or whatever it was, 1986 or some crap like that. I can't even remember the name. But that reminds me in a way, like there was a sort of jank to it, but it was an interesting concept that keeps you sort of hooked and keeps you going. I like these sort of games when they're doing something novel or interesting, and then you look past the jank and the limitations, right? The limitations can be brushed over as long as you're sort of doing something ambitious and original and that's your own, and that's not really what's going on here. I suppose you could argue that the scope and scale of the environments is quite impressive, especially for a little train that could, like a smaller company, but it was making my graphics card scream, and it's working so hard to outsource everything it can to upscaling. It's just wild. Anyway, what it really feels like, you know, to put a bow on this, because I don't really want to talk about it anymore, is that these guys live in a weird little glass cabinet where they think they can run with the AAA guys. They can just make their own AAA quality game with indie assets and skill sets and without bringing much else to the table. And this isn't it. Right, and especially for the price where it's almost AAA anyway. If you look at this and you find it remotely interesting, you probably just pick up an Assassin's Creed game, honestly. It doesn't have to be one of the new ones. I looked at Black Flag the other day. That still holds up all right. It's got its jank and all that, but it's a billionth of the price of this. Anyway, yeah, this isn't meant to be cruel, and I hope you don't think it is, but it's honest as well. From top to bottom, this game is fairly uninspired, and what it's drawing inspirations from doesn't really bring anything new to the table and just does a B version of it. Disappointing. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.